Tasmanian sits in it. Hi, I'm Alva Folks, a doctor of natural medicine and a spiritual advisor. So many people in our modern society feel overwhelmingly tired. Low vitality seems to be the bane of our daily experience. 50 to 70 years ago, in the soil in which we grew our food was more mineral rich, giving our bodies the precious nutrients that we need from our food and water supply. My guest is Darko Prce, a gifted gentleman who is a nutritionalist who has the answers to help us understand some of the issues behind fatigue. And our subject tonight is fatigue. Welcome, Darko.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to have you on again. Okay, this is a very, very important subject. Many people start getting tired. They don't realize that they're getting into the position of fatigue, do they?
No.
And they get really sick, and then it's like, now I'll go and get some help.
Yeah. You know, I found a tidbit of information recently. I found out that a certain energy drink is being sold 9 million per week in Canada. Oh. So we have about 35 million Canadians, and excluding everybody under 18, we're hoping. So is that basically all the adults that are needing energy drinks? And these are basically beverages that contain some sort of stimulant, caffeine, etc.
Right.
And what they're doing is they don't have any energy. They can't make any energy. We'll talk about that, the mitochondria and the nutrients necessary. So what they're doing is they're going to take some sort of caffeinated beverages, whether it's an energy drink or whether it's the old coffee. And what you're doing is you're basically going to your credit card to borrow energy.
Right.
We all knows what happens when we go into credit card debt.
Right.
Well, when we go to look to stimulants for energy, eventually we will go bankrupt. And that's
right.
where a lot of our society finds itself after a number of years of pushing itself too far.
You know, I had a neighbor years ago when I lived in the beaches in Toronto, and the daughter drank half a dozen Coke a day.
Yeah.
And I used to, and you know, I never said anything because, you know, unless you ask me, I mind my own business.
Yeah.
It's not for me to say.
Yeah.
And I used to look at her and I used to wonder, oh my God, you know, what are you doing to yourself? Well, she was like a rake. How could she not be when she was constantly pumping? Because the Coke and all those pops, they're pulling all the nutrients back out again, aren't they?
Exactly.
Not just bankruptcy, but they're pulling everything out, making it all that much worse.
Yeah, you're going to debt, greater and greater debt.
Wow. Okay, so let's start with how does someone know that they're fatigued? What are the main things that you can identify?
I think the first thing is when we wake up in the morning, let's say, we want to feel energized, ready for the day. Oh my gosh, you're going to drag yourself out of bed. Oh, I need my coffee. Don't talk to me till I have my coffee, is the usual saying at the office.
Right.
Then about 5 minutes later, after they get a few sips of caffeine, and then they come in there, all chatty and ready to go.
Right.
Well, what that has done, in effect, is you've gone to bed for 8 hours. You're trying to regenerate your body, replenish your batteries, recharge your batteries, just like your cell phone needs a recharge. And in order for you to get full bars the next day, we need good 8 hours. Our body heals itself up, recharges our batteries, and we should be ready to go. If you got to drag yourself out of bed, need 200, 300, 400 milligrams of caffeine to get yourself going, you know you're suffering from fatigue.
Right.
If you have a short fuse, if you're irritable, if you're grumpy, if you have poor concentration, if you feel like you're just slugging along and there's no real vitality, you have fatigue. Unfortunately, this is not really considered a medical problem. So we kind of just put it on the back burner, and we have to go forward and trot along, family and business and work and all that. And unfortunately, again, we succumb to stimulants. We use sugar, we use caffeine, whether it's caffeinated teas or coffees or cappuccinos, espressos, these new energy drinks. Again, one brand alone, 9 million a week sold. Now this is truly incredible. Right. And it's a sign of the times.
Right, right. I find it sad. Okay, so when we start talking about this is such a, it's simplified, but it's complicated, isn't it? Oh. Okay, because you start adding all the other toxins in that are in our society, and now we're in deep trouble.
Yes, definitely, definitely.
So this actually leads to what we call chronic fatigue as well, does it not?
Eventually, yes.
Yes, okay. But one of the big things that I think people are not recognizing, is that it's also an adrenaline issue.
It is.
Because that's the backup to our immune system.
Yes.
Okay, so explain to our viewers a little bit about how this has become, to me, this is one of the the really serious issues that we have in our society today, because it's not recognized how bad it is. Yeah.
Well, you know, I see so many different walks of life. Doctors, lawyers, teachers, moms, dads, school kids, university students. They come into the office, I would say about 70% of them suffer from fatigue. You know, if they're suffering from hypothyroidism or elevated cholesterol or hypertension, again, they all have their basis in a similarity.
Right.
Their body isn't strong enough, your terrain, if you will. Your body in your terrain, your cellular terrain, it's kind of akin to an engine. Most people understand cars quite well.
Right.
Well, first, you need gas and you need a battery that's fully charged, and you need spark plugs that are functioning properly, and that engine has to have all the parts that run. And all that together dictates the performance of the vehicle.
Right.
If one of those is missing, it doesn't work. So you call your mechanic up and you say, well, my car's not starting. What do you think it is? Well, you bring it down. Let's have a look at it. You know, it could be your battery, could be your spark plugs, could be your fuel pump. Same goes for our human bodies. But instead of an engine, we call it a mitochondria, where we make energy. And inside that, we also have spark plugs. We call these B vitamins. Many people have gone to the health food store and they find stress tablets or energy tablets in their B vitamins. Thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, pantothenic acid, pyroxidine, and so on. All these are spark plugs, and if you have the right fuel, carbohydrates, and if you have the right spark plugs, B vitamins, and if you can convert it into an energy that has the proper oil and fluids and battery fully charged, it will work well, and you'll have performance. And when you step on the gas to go in the morning, to go to work, to take the kids off to school, you're going to feel vibrant and happy. You won't be, oh God, just give me a minute. And that's what I see most people. They're just exasperated and exhausted, and I tell them, get 8 hours of sleep every night, eat 3 meals a day, make sure you get the right nutrients into your body. You wouldn't expect your car to function without the right fuel, and the higher the octane, the better performance you get.
Right.
So these are just some of the things that we want people to know about.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, where do you think we should go with this? Because you deal with this daily. I see some of this and I help some people with it, but I don't deal with this as much as you do. So where do you want to start here and really get into the subject to help people understand what to do and how to deal with it?
Well, the first thing that we have to understand is, like lethargy and weariness and lassitude and fatigue, like there is allergies, there are environmental toxins, there's our adrenal glands that are weak, there could be thyroid disorders, it could be sleep disorders that it's causing our problems, maybe leaky gut syndrome, maybe hypoglycemia. So the first thing we want to know, what's at the root cause? Just like a mechanic, what's causing the vehicle to malfunction? We want to know what's the cause. This is why you need to go see a healthcare provider who's going to sit down with you, hear your primary concerns, your contributing factors, take a look at what you eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner, what you drink, how much exercise do you get, what symptoms is your body giving you? Are you suffering from hypertension? Well, why are you suffering from hypertension? Is it too much salt? Is it too much stress? People say, well, I have hypertension. Well, break the word down. Hyper means high, tension means tense. Well, does that mean that you're running on adrenaline? Is it anything to do with the 3 coffees that you start your day off with just to get into the office? Could be. Now, one of the main things that people don't realize is that they think that there's something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them. Our bodies, as you well know, are created just miraculously. We're such complex creatures, and there's so many amazing things our bodies can do. We can hear, we can smell, we can taste, we can touch, we can reproduce, have children. These are miracles of life. Why is it that for 6, 7, 8,000 years of history, mankind has been able to have a sense of vitality? In the last 100 years, our energy started to go down. And if you take a look at when it started going down, you find around 1940, when we started refining our foods, and we left the farm. We went to the city. We started getting our foods from the supermarket. We started getting marketing, and everything looks nice on the box. Chewy, chewy granola bars. Well, those granola bars have a lot of sugar and a lot of refined things in there. How about this? How about we go get some whole oats, cook them like Grandma used to do, and put a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of walnuts, a few raisins in there, organic of course if you can get it, and that would provide you with whole foods without the nutrients stripped. Like some studies show up to 75 to 82% of the B vitamins, remember, the spark plugs, have been removed from the refining of grains.
Right.
And today everything is whole grain. Well, that's a little bit of marketing. It was a whole grain once.
Right.
So,
not anymore.
Not anymore.
No.
So there.
No.
Imagine if I took 80% of the spark plugs out of your car. Well,
you've got a major problem.
You'd have a thumb up trying to get a ride home.
Right. Yeah. Very, very interesting. Yes. One of the things that I find quite sad, you know, and I see a lot of this, is how many people, when they're having an issue, go to our favorite place and pick up a coffee.
Yes.
In order to move stuff forward.
Yes.
and pick up the energy and get them going
Yes.
again. Right. It's really sad where we're going today, and you know, the genetically modified foods are causing major issues.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't know I have a background in horticulture as well.
Oh.
So, you know, when I was studying, they were talking about how they've taken this and they've made this strain perfect over here. You know, one of the big issues we have today is corn, and how much fungus is attached to this modified corn they've got, because it's just terrible for the system. You know, to try to absorb, and how much of it goes right through us to begin with, right? Because we don't chew properly.
Of course, yes.
Issue upon issue, isn't it? Yes. Okay. So we're going to go to commercial break here in just a minute. We're going to continue on with some of these. I'm going to ask right after the commercial. Let's start with when someone comes to your clinic, okay? I know you've got a beautiful clinic. We've talked about it. I want you to walk us through a session and how you deal with this, so people get a full idea of how nutrition should be dealt with versus what some of them are doing, just running to the health food store to get a little bit of the B12 and the B6 getting on, okay? My guest tonight is Darko, and we're talking about nutrition. In particular, we're talking about fatigue and how it affects so many other aspects of our life and can really cause issues within family, jobs. We'll be back right after this commercial break, and we'll talk some more and see if we can give you some insights on how to get your life back on track and not be so tired, including the 8 hours sleep at night. Be right back after this commercial break with Darko. Welcome back. We're talking to Darko, and he's a nutritionalist, and he really takes his time to make sure that when he's dealing with clients, I don't know whether you call them patients or not, I call them clients.
No, we call them clients.
Safer.
Yes, absolutely.
Politically correct.
Politically.
You actually walk them through a whole process, and their first visit is not a 5-minute run in the door, tell me what your issue is, and I'm going to write you a prescription.
No.
You go through a whole gamut of things in order to find out. Okay, so share with us. This to me is so exciting, because this is how it should be done versus what we're getting sometimes. So share with our community what you do.
Well, you know, my first 20 years of life, I had a lot of health issues, and it was always the same thing, regardless of who the specialist was. It was 2-3 minutes, waiting for 45 minutes in a giant waiting room, and then given a script and off to the drugstore, waiting for my script to be filled, and 3 months later I'm back to refill it, and I'm constantly dealing with the symptoms. And that's what led me into this field in my early 20s, and now here it's 25 years later. And we've been practicing, and we've evolved like any other business. We evolve and we try to get better all the time, but we haven't changed the way we practice in 15 years, because what we've got is perfect. It's not your 5-minute visit. We're interested in, first of all, are you on any medications? What are they? What's your primary concern? What are the contributing factors? What supplements, homeopathics, herbs are you taking? What about your mom's family, your dad's family? Because you inherit not only your eye color and your body structure, but also the terrain or the predisposition. So if there was a predisposition on your dad's side for diabetes and you look more like your dad, well, chances are you'll have a higher chance of getting that. Doesn't mean you have to, but you have a higher chance. So along with that, we want to take a look at, have you ever been hospitalized? Is there any surgeries that you've been through? For example, tonsillitis. And people say, well, what's the big deal? Everybody's had their tonsils out. I want to stop people in that moment and say, well, think about this. And we do a timeline. And a timeline is basically from age 0 to whatever age you are. And we list things in order of everything you've been through. So for example, if you were immunized and vaccinated when you were shortly after birth, and then you ended up with an ear infection, you were given antibiotics, then you had tonsillitis, you were given antibiotics, and then you had another one and another one. And after 3 or 4 years of repetitive tonsillitis, the doctor announces, well, the tonsils aren't responding to antibiotic therapy, we need to remove them. Now imagine that. A body part is screaming out for help, and we want to remove the first line of defense in our immune system. What we want to do is we want to get all that evidence and take a look at how you built your disease. You don't, of course, you can catch some diseases from dirty water and whatnot, but most diseases are built, and we want to see how they're built. So now we go to our questionnaire, and we have some people say, oh my gosh, why is there so many questions? Because we want to know everything about you. Do you have high blood pressure? If so, how high? Do you have low blood pressure? If so, how low? Do you have a cold body? How's your blood sugar? Do you have any diabetes? Do you get irritable with your, when you're late for your meal? Do you crave sweets, coffee, alcohol? Do you have any back pains? Where in your back? Is it in your cervical, in your lumbar, in your thoracic? Is it because of a slipped disc? Is it because of degeneration? Do you catch colds? How many times a year? Have you had how many flu shots? Do you suffer from any inflammatory conditions of the respiratory system? Bronchitis, for example, asthma, any difficulty breathing? And we go through a multitude of questions, and each one is grouped for a different body part. So for example, for the nervous system, we ask, do you have any anxiety, nervousness, depression, frustration, anger? So we score them on a scale of 1 to 4, 4 being the highest, and then we keep going and we look at how's your liver functioning. Is there any nausea? Is there any vomiting? Is there any gas, bloating, heartburn, regurgitation? Do you have any bowel problems? A loose stool, diarrhea, constipation, irritable bowel, celiac, IBS? How's your hair, your skin, your nails? Is your hair falling out? Are your nails ridged? Do you have white spots on them? And then we go to female section, of course. We ask how the cycle is and if there's any abnormalities with the cycle, and how a whole bunch of other personal questions for the ladies that we won't go into. But if there's been any history of endometriosis, fibroid cysts, menopause. And what we have now is we have several pages of information that tells us what your primary concern is, the contributing factors, your family that you came from, the symptoms that your body's manifesting, and then finally, what are you drinking? How many coffees? How many teas? How much water? How much juice? How much pop? Do you smoke? Do you drink? How much do you sleep? How much do you exercise? What do you eat for breakfast? And people just say cereal. Well, that's not enough. If you noticed, it says in detail. There's many different types of cereals.
Right.
There's sugary puffs.
Right.
Or there's whole grain, steel-cut oats, quinoa, kamut, whole grains that provide massive amounts of all the nutrients necessary, including the carbohydrates or glucose, the fuel, and the B vitamins necessary, the spark plugs, the fuel and the spark plugs. All together, usually those people won't even come and see me because they provide all the nutrients for their body. So what we typically see, I don't have time for breakfast. I'm not hungry in the morning, and ironically, that's because their cortisol levels are usually high, their stress hormone. These are the individuals who fall asleep. They literally crash out at 9:30 in front of the TV, 10 o'clock, and then they wake up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, they can't fall asleep again. They wake up in the morning and they're aggravated and angry because their blood sugar is low, and they don't want to eat because adrenaline is still coursing through their body. There's actually tests that we do at the clinic, many different types. There's blood spot testing and salivary cortisol testing, food allergies, heavy metals, etc. We have a whole host of tests, but there's one that tells us how much cortisol you have, and we basically get a sample of your saliva, and it contains enough data to tell us how much cortisol is in your body at any given time. Morning, noon, and night. And based on that, it tells us how well you're providing energy, because if you can't make energy, you have to run on adrenaline. And that's what most people have, and I really feel sorry for them. They're, again, these 9 million a week energy drinks, a coffee shop on every corner that never seems to go out of business. The amount of sugar, 150 pounds per person per year. Now, I won't divulge my complete weight, but it's a little bit higher than 150, and I can't imagine that the average person, let's say my size, at about 180, 85 pounds, would consume 150 pounds of sugar, and then we're surprised that we have an obesity epidemic,
Right.
that we have what we call dysbiosis in the gut, candida, all the sugar feeding it, and we're surprised that diabetes is an epidemic, and then we see advertising for free glucometers on television. Well, it's wonderful that you're monitoring your blood sugar, but who's going to fix it?
Right.
And it's a good thing that we have minerals. For example, vanadium is a mineral that was once in our soil that was used for the treatment of diabetes. It was actually in the Dorland's Medical Dictionary in 1932. It was in the medical dictionary specifically for the treatment of diabetes.
Really? I didn't know that one.
It's actually in Staying Healthy with Nutrition. It's a textbook written by Dr. Elson Haas, a medical doctor and a colleague of his who was a PhD and a dietitian. And it's a wealth of information. I always tell people the most valuable thing you have in your house is your library. It's not your wallet. It's not your car. It's not your china or your crystal. It's your library. And I can tell directly by what books you have on the shelf. So if you have books on nutrition and herbs and health and food, chances are you have a healthy household. And I see so many mothers, and it's so encouraging today. They're cooking organic. They're not buying refined food for their kids. They're taking a special interest because their family is their most important asset. And they're taking the time to learn this stuff. And when they do, I'm happy to announce they never have to come and see in person like me.
Right.
And that's the goal.
Well, but you also have to remember that there's only 50 to 60% nutrition in our food today.
Oh, yeah.
So they have to get it somewhere too.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's part of the issue we have going on as well. You know?
People often say to me, don't you get tired of taking vitamins? And, you know, here I am 25 years into it. And yes, it's a little bit of a irritation after every meal, opening up my multivitamin, opening up my enzyme, opening up my fish oil, opening up my antioxidant, and I take one of these and two of these and one of those, and there's like, well, do you have any room for your dinner? And then I just kind of swoosh them all back in one gulp, and they say, well, how did you swallow all that at once? It's practice, of course. If you could knock back Big Macs and pizzas with one gulp, I'm sure we can do the vitamins as well. And it's unfortunate, but this is the new normal.
Yes.
Our foods that had the nutrients, now we're trying to buy the best food we can. Of course, as you well know, with your background, the garden is the best place for that. Picked at its ripeness, that it has all the nutrients. When the sun hits it, it brings it forth. We all know, for example, a premature child comes into the world, if it hasn't gone through its full course, it comes into the world weak and prone to sickness.
Absolutely.
Our foods are exactly the same. The sun has to ripen them. It's not just the taste and the flavor, but it's the nutrient content. In fact, eating foods, for example, fruit that's not ripe, is actually bad for you because it has acids that are unripe and it changes your pH.
Right. So it's really important, yes. Right now we're enjoying zucchini and beans and tomatoes.
I love all of them. All of them.
Yeah, I'm constantly out there picking and giving them to the neighborhood.
You find so many friends when you're giving away your gardening.
Oh yes, yes, love it. I don't know that I could be without my garden.
No,
you know, yeah.
I'm very lucky. We actually, people are pretty surprised because we have our clinic is a house that's been converted into an office.
Yeah.
And when they look outside my office window, they see a garden back there and they say, what is that? I said, well, those are Swiss chard. I said, that's the green beans, those are the tomatoes, that's the lettuce. And they go, do you live here? I said, no, this is my office. I said, I live in Mississauga. They said, well, you have a garden at your office? I said, well, the reason that we have a clinic set up like this is because we have a full kitchen, we have a full garden, and at lunchtime, when I take a break and I need to recharge, I want good food. Right. I don't want to have to get some refined sandwich.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Isn't that interesting? Yes. In the last year, I've actually had to go to gluten-free bread.
That's another great step.
Oh, it is. We have to do, right?
Absolutely.
In order to be healthy. Okay, we have to go to commercial break. We're talking about nutrition. We hope that this is giving you some insights in how to turn your life around in order to help you understand more and more about what's going on. So when we come back, let's talk about how the sugar's affecting the body. And I also want to address some of the foods that we're eating, because the blending of the foods is sometimes causing issues for people as well.
Yes.
So as a nutritionalist, you've got a lot of answers in regards to this. So when someone comes to your clinic, well, we've still got 2 minutes, so let's start with this. how do you address the food that they're eating, Darko? How do you say, you know, you've got allergies to this and you need to start eating some of this? Do you actually give them recipes and things like that as well?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. In addition to the questionnaire that we went through, we also do several diagnostic tests. We have live blood cell analysis. We do iridology. It's looking at the terrain through your eye. It's about 340 years old. It's been used as long as 2,000 years by the Chaldeans, a tribe back in the Middle East who used to judge how healthy their livestock were by looking in their eye. We have, again, salivary test and blood spot testing and whatnot. We also take a look again at the timeline in your medical history and any x-rays that you may have, radiology, ultrasounds, blood work, very valuable, liver function tests, urinalysis, white blood cell counts. We want as much information as possible, and the way we explain it to people, it's kind of like playing Wheel of Fortune. The more of the puzzle you turn around, the easier it is for us to solve. So the more evidence that we get, the clearer picture we get, who you are, what caused it, what your body is saying, then we devise a plan how to get you back on track. So for example, if you came in suffering from depression because you're running on adrenaline and you don't have enough magnesium and you have too much sodium, well, we'd give you a booklet. After a couple of weeks, it takes us some time to develop it. And it gives you a little introduction into our structure of our clinic and what to expect, and then explanation of hypertension. What is it? What causes it? What are the medical treatments? Beta blockers, calcium channel blockers, ACE inhibitors, diuretics, platelet aggregating inhibitors. Then we give you your alternatives, the vitamins, the minerals, the herbs, and so on.
Hold on to that thought. We have to go to commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue on with this conversation, and we're going to try to help you understand how to prevent fatigue, or at least get it back on track when you've got fatigue, so that you're healthy and happy and whole again.
Yes.
Be right back. Welcome back. We're talking about fatigue and nutrition and how to deal with it. Okay, so you were talking about the package you put together when someone comes in, and you take a couple of weeks and you start actually putting material together for them. So continue on with what you were saying.
Well, basically, after all that information is compiled in our office, it usually takes about 3 hours, believe it or not. People say, well, what are we going to do for 3 hours? And trust me, there's a lot of information to go through. And then we say, give us a couple of weeks to put, I need some time to look at all this data and then to try to put together a game plan. I tell people it's kind of like an architect. If you come into a house that's broken down, you want to come in and with your clipboard and take a survey of what works and what doesn't. And then you want to go back behind the scenes and you want to look at the evidence and say, okay, what do we have here? What is working and what isn't working? And what isn't working, how do we fix it? And then we go into our textbooks, our herb books, our vitamin books, the minerals, the homeopathics, the food books, and we extract all the right nutrients, vitamins, minerals, herbs, homeopathics, foods, and we put them together customized for that person. It's not a magic bullet for everybody. It's like a cup of coffee will give everybody energy, but to restore your body or my body or anybody else's is a specific based on, again, your concern, your contributing factors, your family history. So after about 3 weeks, it's enough time for me to go through it. Usually it takes about an hour or two to go through all the data, depending. Sometimes, actually many times with the cancers, unfortunately, it takes 2-3 hours just to go through this much blood work.
Right.
There's red blood cells, white blood cells, cancer markers, ultrasounds, x-rays, etc., a biopsy report. So there's a lot of data to go through. And again, if you were going to build a house for $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, first you'd want an architect to put together a blueprint. That way you know what you're building, what materials you're going to need, and exactly how to build it. You don't just start nailing wood together indiscriminately hoping it turns into a house. Everything has rhyme and reason to it. The foundation, then the walls, then the roof, then the interior, plumbing, electrical, etc. And our body is the same. We all know we have plumbing, our nervous system is our electrical, and so on. So we give them a program. For example, we used hypertension as an example. There'll be an explanation of hypertension, what it is, what causes it, the conventional treatments. We mentioned beta blockers, angiotensin, etc. All these medications used to suppress the symptoms of high tension. That's the cause of it. And then we tell you all the nutrients and what they do. So for example, magnesium lowers blood pressure by dilating blood vessels. Potassium displaces sodium, reduces blood volume, works as effectively as diuretics, reduces the load on the heart. and so on and so on. So we want to educate. Most people have forgotten that the word doctor comes from the Latin to teach.
Right.
Doctor meant teacher.
Right.
Today, we're not teaching people anymore. And if you give a man a fish, he only eats for a day. Teach him how to fish. We're interested.
For a lifetime.
Exactly. And we don't consider success when we see your symptom go away. We consider it success when your body is made whole. So we go to great lengths of putting these books together, and they're literally books. Again, the explanation of your disease, the medical treatment, the nutritional treatment. Then comes 15 pages of diet. People say, well, 15 pages. We give you a 7-day diet: breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. And then when they say that, I say, well, I don't know how to cook quinoa, and I don't know. Well, fortunately, we thought of that. And then the following pages are breakfast, lunch, dinner recipes, how to prepare it, the ingredients, even the nutritional information. So when your friend looks at you at lunch and goes, what are you eating? And you say, well, it's quinoa. Why are you eating it? And then you're reading off, well, it says here it has 14 grams of protein, and it has B vitamins, and it has 8.6 grams of fiber. And then the person at work says, hey, can I try some of that? And, you know, I think that's the most important thing, to share the good in this world, to help each other so that we can feel better, less fatigued, less tired, less grumpy. You know, I think that if we could just get rid of all this fatigue and grumpiness, we could probably cut the divorce rate in half, because most times I hear many times in the office, the ladies say, I can't take him anymore, or I can't take this anymore.
Right.
You know what? They say, I'm sick and tired of this.
Yeah.
Tired.
Tired. Absolutely.
They don't have the energy to cope. So again, give them a book. It's about this thick. It's about a half-inch thick. Explanation of the disease, a full diet. Then comes your supplements, all listed how to take them, and then monographs, what each one does.
Right.
And we also give copies of all the lab values that we've acquired, whether it's analysis for your eyes, iris, live cell, etc. And we put that all into a book. And after about 15, 20 years of doing this, we've evolved this to the point where it's just perfect, and we're already anticipating. So as you're turning the page in your book to see how many supplements you're taking, the page before of it says at the top, why do I need to take so many pills? So we're one step ahead of you. We know what you're going to say, and we try to explain to people, these aren't pills the way you would consider pills in terms of medication. These are building blocks. So if you want to build your body, your house, you need bricks, you need wood, you need lumber, you need nails.
They're not pills, they're nutrients.
They are nutrients.
They are nutrients.
And once upon a time, we had them in our food.
Right.
Before the last century, around the 1900s, by 1940, modern agriculture showed up. We started spraying chemicals into our food. Today, foods are grown with Miracle Grow. It's basically nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, only 3 nutrients. We have 72 different nutrients that we need. They give us 3. It's the equivalent of going to the gym, eating hamburgers and pizza and hot dogs, and utilizing anabolic steroids. Yes, your body grows under the influence of an artificial growth factor, but there's no health. There's no wellness. And unfortunately, as many might know, the bodybuilders usually succumb to kidney, liver, testicular cancers, and a host of other problems because they use these abnormal things. Today, it's called cancer.
Right.
Cancer is the #1 killer today. And what is cancer? I say to people, this is cancer. You have a car. Every 5,000 kilometers or so, you were told to do an oil change. At 48,000 kilometers, change your air filter. At 96,000 kilometers, change your spark plugs. So we have intervals for changing all these things.
Right.
Cancer is someone who has never done an oil change, never changed their filter, never changed their spark plugs. No B vitamins, no whole grains, no organic foods, no vitamins or minerals. I don't like that stuff. I don't believe in that stuff. Well, whether you believe in it or not, and you don't want to waste your money on an oil change or changing your filter. Nobody does want to wait in line and spend $100, but it's mandatory maintenance. And the human body, if it doesn't get it, eventually it gets weakened. Your acute symptoms of headaches and fatigue gets to chronic fatigue, gets to high blood pressure and cholesterol, gets to cancers and tumor growths. And people don't see the path.
That it's
and then when they have cancer and they're told it's stage 3, you have 6 months, chemo and radiation. Well, chemo and radiation and surgery, as wonderful as these options might sound, they haven't increased the survival rate for 60 years now. They haven't changed the rate of cancer since 1960 if you really do your studies. So it might have its place in dire situations, but for the most part, it's not a solution. And most people don't realize that until it's too late.
Right.
And this is the hardest part, I think, of my job,
Right.
is when I sit across from someone and nobody told them.
Right.
You know, their doctor didn't tell them at age 30, hey,
No.
start taking antioxidants,
Well,
don't eat genetically modified foods, clean the fluoride and the chlorine out of your water. They're carcinogens, for God's sakes. Those chemicals underneath your sink that have the skull and crossbones on the bottle,
they're there for a reason.
those are bad.
Yeah,
you know,
I know.
vinegar, baking soda, boric acid, wonderful
Yeah.
things that we can utilize instead.
Yeah. Let me ask you, how important is the water to what we do, Darko?
Well,
how do you feel about this?
70% of the world is water. Ironically, 70% of the human body is water.
Right.
It is the nutrient second to oxygen that we just can't function without for more than a day or two at most, unless
Right.
you have camel genes in your background.
Yeah.
So if you're a camel, you'll go a little bit longer. But our water is something that we don't have a choice. It's not, well, I choose to or not choose to. Every human, every living thing on this earth, whether it be animal or plant, has to have water.
Right.
And it's the fluid medium in which everything runs. And if that water is dirty, well, we all know what happens after earthquakes or things, for example, in Haiti, the earthquake, people were dying of cholera and foodborne diseases. One of the greatest achievements of modern medicine wasn't medicine itself, but it was sanitary living conditions.
Right.
Doctors ran their hands under running water and not just wipe their hands on their smock and go to the next patient.
Right.
What really surprises me is that we think that we're so advanced. It wasn't but 100 years ago that we were still bloodletting and calling that medicine, treating people with quinine and mercury and poisons. And the philosophy was that the disease was in the blood, and if we cut your vein, drain the blood, all the bad diseases would leave with you. George Washington, one of the founding fathers of the United States, died of a sore throat. 200 years ago, he went to the physician at the time. They did the bloodletting, and he's quieted down, and they thought he was recovering quite well. A few more drops of blood, and he basically succumbed to blood losses, and he died. So, you know, it's interesting when you read these books. There's actually a great book called The History of Medicine by Lois Magner, and it actually explains how medicine started 2,500 years ago to this day. And when you read this, you have to, in a sad way, but you laugh. You know, it's obviously sad for the people that have died, but I believe that in 100 years from now, when we're reading the history books of 1950, 1980, 2010, we're going to laugh at what we considered medicine, to put a drug on something, to drive it back into the body, to chemotherapy, radiation, cut it out, burn it out, slash it out. It doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
I'm just wondering what it's going to take and how many more people are going to have to suffer and die before we get the message. And we're at about $1.5 trillion in the United States that our healthcare system costs, and we are at about 330 billion here in Canada, and it is unsustainable. Most people don't realize that 48% of your provincial taxes is there to subsidize a healthcare system that doesn't know how to fix you, the doctors who aren't trained how to fix you, and the infrastructure behind it that actually suppresses natural remedies and the truth.
Right. Well, one of the things that we also have to recognize is that the majority of doctors do not take nutrition when they're taking their courses.
Yes.
And it really should be mandatory in what they're doing, because if they had the nutrition, they would understand much more of what's going on and how to prevent diseases or identify them before they become a major disease within our community. That's why I love what I do as a doctor of natural medicine, because it's all about going back to basics.
It's the best.
Yeah.
Because you feel, you know, everybody wants to go to school or go to work and come back home and say, hey, look, I got an A+ on my math test. Nobody comes home with an F and go, hey, look what I got. It's like, oh, you know, what happened? Oh, I got an F. I believe doctors are the same. They want to go to work and they want to come home at the end of the day feeling fulfilled. And I know that the young doctors today are clamoring for more nutrition.
Right.
And I've been teaching nutrition for about 13 years. So if there's anybody out there who's interested, I would actually do it for free. I would actually teach doctors nutrition for free. Go to their U of T, whatever university it is, and teach it for free. I've been teaching it for 13 years. I have the course notes, the tests, the infrastructure, everything. There's so many doctors, and I'm so encouraged. One, her name is Dr. Elizabeth Owens, and there was a video on YouTube that I show a lot of the clients that come in. And she was a very accomplished doctor, a pediatric surgery, worked in the emergency room, trained as a GP, credentials out to yin-yang. And she took 3 years off to learn about nutrition because she was curing people with nutrition. What she was taught would have never been cured. And she was so excited. And she's I'll tell you about arginine in a minute. And she got so excited she barely contained herself. That's the kind of stuff that I would want to see in our healthcare system. Imagine.
Okay, hang on to that thought, because we got to go to commercial break. We're talking about nutrition. We're hoping this is going to give you some insights to get past fatigue, get your life back on track, and be able to be a much happier, much more functioning, healthy individual. So we'll be right back after this commercial break. Welcome back. Okay, so we're talking about fatigue. We've got Darko here, who's a nutritionalist, and we want to talk about the nutritional supplements. So would you put that picture up for us so that Darko can walk through some of what we're doing? Okay, so explain what's going on here, Darko.
Okay, so what we have here is we have a picture, and starting from the top on the left side there, we have proteins, and in the center there's carbohydrates or polysaccharides. On the right side is fats. And there's an arrow that takes it down into that gray box. This is basically your engine. And you probably can't see it too well, but it's glucose, our fuel, goes into our engine, and there's many different biochemical steps. And in the center of that box, there's a circle. It's called the Krebs cycle. And inside that Krebs cycle is where we actually make that horsepower. So if you see a speedy Corvette on the highway, it has a lot of horsepower. And inside that engine, that's where the fuel gets turned into power that we call something called ATP. It's adenosine triphosphate, big long word. Now, there's a lot of different biochemical steps necessary to fulfill that energy production, and we'll talk about some of them. So, for example, iron. Iron alone, and mostly in women of childbearing years and vegetarians, but a lack of iron leads to a lack of energy production because you don't have oxygen. We know that we need oxygen to allow fuel to burn. For example, if you're making a barbecue and it's not burning very well, you blow on it and you wave it, you get more oxygen and it fuels the flames.
Okay.
Then we have magnesium. Magnesium is a mineral that's involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions. That means it's the equivalent of 300 different components in your engine to make ATP energy. Another one is L-carnitine. L-carnitine is kind of like the purulator or the UPS guy. He is the delivery guy that delivers the nutrients to your engine, almost like your fuel line. And that's an amino acid. There's B12. B12 deficiency, very common in people who don't have adequate stomach acids or take acid blockers for heartburn. They're called proton pump inhibitors or acid blocking agents. Vegans as well. If you don't have B12, you can't make energy. Folic acid, its very close cousin, is also involved in chronic energy deficiencies, chronic fatigue syndromes. There's something called nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Big long word.
Okay.
They call it NADH for short. And it's basically the universal energy within our cells. We have our omega-3 fatty acids and omega-6 fatty acids. We call them the essential fatty acids. It's all over the news today. We're talking about essential fatty acids for this and for that. They are critically important. They're like oxygen magnets in our body. They help convert lactic acid to CO2 so that our muscles don't burn. Many people might know it as fibromyalgia. They say, my muscles hurt, they burn, they're sore, and it doesn't matter how I turn, they hurt. It's because lactic acid, a waste product, has built up in your muscles, like exercising too much. And we've all been to the gym and we're lifting it, and we're holding our breath, and all of a sudden our muscles start to burn, and the trainer says, breathe. Well, he wants the lactic acid to clear. These omega-3 fatty acids not only help with energy production and lactic acid clearance, but they're like oxygen magnets, and they're like little antennas that are like magnets that attract energy to our cells. And we have, last but not least, we'll talk about CoQ10. A coenzyme Q10 is critically important in what we call mitochondrial energy production. And again, mitochondria is your engine underneath your hood, and the fuel that goes in, carbohydrates, all the vitamins and minerals that we just spoke about, and CoQ10 is almost like that spark. So if you're trying to get a lighter to light, you need that flint to make that spark. That's what CoQ10 does. It gives you that spark, and it allows that fuel to be burned along with the spark plugs, of course. So that's just a few of the vitamins and minerals that are necessary in energy production. And there's a lot of wonderful herbs as well. For example, we'll talk about a few of them. There's one called cordyceps. It's actually a mushroom fungus that has been used for several thousand years in Chinese medicine that helps your body adapt. So you can work harder, you can stay up later, you can get more accomplished with less sleep. Not that that's advisable, but in those situations where you have to sometimes, it provides you with those nutrients. Rhodiola is another one. They call it Siberian ginseng because it's primarily used in Russia. They say that in the 1970s, all the Russians were winning all the Olympic medals because they were using rhodiola. And they say the people who use this were living more than 100 years on average. And it's an adaptogen. It kind of builds up your body and allows you to cope with not enough sleep, too much stress, deadlines, not enough food, not enough of the proper nutrients. It just helps your body adapt and become stronger, more resilient. Another one, and the most common one everybody knows, ginseng.
Right.
The problem with ginseng is the quality. You can buy $5 ginseng, you can buy $200 ginseng, and there's a big difference. Ginseng that's grown on the side of a mountain in northern China that hasn't been harvested but every 15 years in very harsh environments takes a lot of the nutrients from the soil and makes it a very resilient plant. Now you take it, you could literally feel it. The herbs that we give people are orthomolecular, incredibly high amounts of the exact right nutrients. And they say, what is in that stuff? I take that stuff, and 5 minutes later, are you sure this is not a drug? I said, no, I can assure you these are herbal concentrates.
Right. Just
that there's such potent concentrations that they can only be given by prescription, if you will. You can't just go off the shelf because, you know, a little knowledge is more dangerous than not at all.
Absolutely.
And just because it's natural doesn't mean it's safe.
That's right.
And again, who are you dealing with? What are their conditions? What is their medical history? What medications are they taking? Then you start putting together a game plan.
Right.
Put together an architectural plan, a blueprint, if you will, and now you know what nutrients you need, and then you find the right vitamins, minerals, herbs, homeopathics, glandulars, and all the other natural treatments, and find the highest dosages of each one and put them into one program. Type it all up, give it to the person, and what we love to see is we usually have, regardless of how many problems you have, we like to see 3 visits to us in 1 year.
Right.
We don't want to see you after the 3rd one, because if we can't fix your problem in 3 visits within 1 year, then we don't know what we're doing.
Interesting. Interesting. So the majority of people, when they come in to see you, how much are they taking in order to get, and I know it has to do with what's wrong with them and how bad they are, Darko. I get all of that.
Yeah.
But the majority, are they getting 5 different?
I would say the average person with a chronic degenerative condition would have approximately 6 supplements.
Okay.
Yeah, 6 supplements. The person who's already feeling okay but just wants to be that much better, 3, 4.
Okay.
Yeah. The thing that we have is we have customized formulations that we create ourselves.
Right.
So you don't have to buy 5 different bottles. We put them all into one,
right,
which drastically reduces the cost.
Right.
And increases compliance because you don't have to swallow as many pills.
Right.
Most of these pills are filler, unfortunately.
I know.
You buy folic acid, it's 1 milligram.
According to the government, they only have to put 19% of what they say into a pill.
Well,
a lot of people don't even get that.
People get frustrated because I say, well, you need 5 milligrams of folic acid for cervical dysplasia, which can lead to cervical cancer. And well, they say I can only find 1 milligrams. She said, well, why am I paying $10 for 1 milligram per tablet, and then I have to take 15 of these a day? Can't you get me a bigger dosage? I said, unfortunately, the Canadian government doesn't allow it. and I said, it is unfortunate because you're getting a capsule or a tablet that's 500 milligram with only 1 milligram of the active ingredient. 499 milligrams is filler.
Right.
I personally wouldn't want somebody to do that to me.
No.
And, you know, as they say, do unto others as you'd want done to you.
Amen. Amen. Okay. It's been fascinating. It's been fascinating. Educational.
Oh, love it.
I know a lot.
I love
but
it.
My God, you really put it all into proper perspective for me. Thank you for being back on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
The only true cure for disease is prevention, and nutritional medicine not only helps restore a body back to health, it also helps to keep it strong enough to resist disease in the first place. Okay. At the end of the month, the Alva show is being canceled. No, it's not my doing. The station has decided to give someone else an opportunity to do this. I want to thank my viewers for being here and making me the success over the last 5 years. It's been an honor, a pleasure. I wish you much health, happiness, and spiritual growth. Namaste. Thank you for being back on the show with me. It's been a pleasure to have you back. And I hope that everything is very successful for you in the future. It's been a delight. You have helped us within the community so much to understand. You know, health is so important today, and we have to be on top of our own health. So I hope that this promotes a lot of people calling you to get their health back on track.
Well, my passion is to bring people the truth, because I don't want to see any more suffering. There's always going to be death and suffering. That's a part of life. But I believe that 80 to 90% of the diseases that we have in our world are preventable and are fixable. And people say, well, that's impossible. You know, I've been teaching for 13 years. I've logged somewhere near 8,000 hours just teaching health professionals in a classroom, and I can assure you I've had multitudes who have said the exact same thing. But after a very short period of time and an opportunity to explain, a few textbooks for references, their eyes are opened and they realize this is actually possible.
Right.
And that's my dream, to reduce suffering and to make this world a better place to live in for all of us.
I agree. I agree. So I hope that our callers give you a call, get their life back on track, and I wish you much success in all that you're doing, and that you move forward with where you want to go in the near future.
Oh,
yeah. It's been a pleasure. I hope you learned from our nutritional discussion tonight. There are so many things that we can do as individuals by paying attention to what we're eating. Glutens are a big problem. Sugar is a major issue, okay? That can cure anybody is yourself. Absolutely. You have to take personal responsibility, my big beef, personal responsibility for where you're going in life and what you're doing. So we hope this gave you some insights. And if I can recommend, you can always call and get a copy of this in order to see more of what Darko does. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and hope to see you again next week. Join us again for Alva.